Hey everyone, it's Rose Francois, your host for Thanks for Bringing Me Back podcast. This podcast is centered in gratitude, where we thank ourselves, God, a person, place, thing, or situation for bringing us back to who we are. Our 5 core values are to be grateful, be kind, be forgiving, be you, and be brave. Let's get into it. Hi everyone. I'm so excited to be back. Welcome back to the Thanks for Bringing Me Back podcast. This is your podcast host. I'm Rose Francois. And remember, our core values are to be grateful, to be kind, be you, be forgiving, and be brave. So let's get into it. I am so excited to have Conrad Julian on this podcast. I don't know why I said your name like that. I was thinking of y'all, I had some funny British days where I just love trying to practice my British accent. I am not British, but I would say Conrad's name in a British way to practice, and that's where that came from. But anyway, you're probably wondering, who is Conrad Julian? Tell us more about who he is, and y'all, you're gonna listen to all the things he's gonna share. But before we start, I just want to say how much I admire Julian. I call him Julian. And how much he has been such a great friend to me. And so it's just like a conversation that we would probably have without recording on the podcast. We've had previous conversations before on his podcast. He'll talk more about that, I'm sure. But I just want to say thank you, friend, for being a good friend. And with that, I want to ask you the question that we ask everybody when we join the podcast. People are curious, like, who are you? So, who are you?
First and foremost, I appreciate you for having me on and thank you for the kind words. I'll describe myself as a child of a king who has the privilege of being born in the motherland.
Okay.
Yeah, I still speak my mother's tongue. And I am also passionate about life, everything life has to offer. And I'm one who's big on chasing my dreams and visions. So, spiritually speaking, just to kind of break it down, spiritually speaking, I am a Christian who is a servant of the Most High God. And naturally or emotionally speaking, I am one. Well, let me take it back. Culturally speaking, I am one who was born and raised in Ghana. I lived there for 14 years before leaving. So, yeah, I am Ghanaian all through and through. Like I said, I still speak my mother's tongue. I speak a couple of languages from the motherland. And emotionally speaking, or just about life in general, I am one who's passionate about life. I am a creative. I love everything video. I love everything like content creation. And I am currently a podcaster. I'm enjoying that path. And basically, like I said, I am one who's passionate about life. So the goals, ideas, and visions I have, I try to pursue it for a while. If it's not it, I move on to the next thing. But I'm living my life one day at a time at the moment.
Wow, I love that. Okay. What I actually love about your description about who you are, Julian, is that you did not flinch once. Like, you had everything just flowing. I'm a child of the king. I'm a servant of the Most High. I'm speaking my mother's tongue. Like, okay, you better drop these gems.
Right.
But I also loved how you talked about how you're from Ghana, but you were raised in Ghana up until you're 14 and you came to the States. So that's a really interesting dynamic, right? So almost, I know how old you are. I'm not going to say it, but like almost like that's like a good half of your life, right? Where you are looking at your experience from Ghana versus the States. And then you mentioned how you're a lover of life and how you are a creative person and you're currently looking at using or different creative stuff, but you are like currently holding a podcast and you moved on to the things that you thought were serving you or were interesting to you, but you moved on if they didn't work out. In my own words, summarizing what you said. So I have a couple questions for you.
Okay.
So the first is, how did your move from Ghana influence who you are today, right? Sitting in this chair, talking to me on this podcast. And then two, how was it so, it sounds like it's easy for you, so I'm assuming. So let me know if I'm not correct. But how is it easy for you to go into this creative space, get into different creative things? So whether it's like a project, a creative project, or it's a podcast, and then you move on to the next thing if it doesn't serve you. Some people see that as failure.
Mm.
And the way you talked about it was different. So the first is, how did your experience living in Ghana for half of those years in the States influence who you are? And the second is, how are you able to just move on to the next thing creatively without being, I don't know, discouraged?
So I'll start by saying being born and raised in the motherland, it teaches us a lot about culture and the importance of who we are as the Ghanaian person. So we are very respectful to our elders. I mean, I think that's one thing that has influenced my life a lot. And the other thing about our Ghanaian culture is that we are very hardworking, and overall we love life. We love what life has to offer. I mean, sometimes you see that we make the most out of the littlest things. So basically, whatever we have currently in front of us, we try and extend it as far as possible. I mean, you can describe it however way you want, but like I said, it's just to us, it's basically making the most out of life. You know, you
Mhm.
can sit in life and wonder what if all these things and what if I had this, I would have been better this way, that way, whatever. But basically, life is what you make it. And yeah, being raised there has kind of like taught me that. One thing I've noticed a lot when I go back often to visit is that the Ghanaian everyday man most times doesn't have it easy in terms of finances, but you will see how well they are extending their one city, that's our currency there, to as much maximum potential as they can because the current economy is not it's not helpful or servant to the everyday man, but you would be
Mhm.
surprised how much they are still surviving in the current economy. Again, that might be in most countries, but that's where I'm from in terms of what we're speaking about, how that influenced who I am here. So coming here to America, one thing I learned quickly is that you have to be bold and speak up what is kind of on your mind. You know, you have the right place and the right time for that, but basically it's helped me to understand that there are certain rooms that you walk in, you just basically take over. When I say take
Mhm.
over, it's like do not be shy and stay in the corner of the room or whatever the case may be. Because to me, at some point, like growing up, I was very shy. I still kind of am, but not in every room. In most rooms, you would see me going about talking to people. In other rooms, you see me just, staying to myself, and whoever comes talks to me. I'm definitely not going to be shy to not talk to them, but I will. But in other rooms, I am also like taking the lead and then talking to people or going to, introduce myself to people before them coming to me. So,
Wow. I I learned something new about you. It's really interesting how the respecting of your elders, right? You watching how the men in Ghana make something out of nothing, essentially. Seems like it really motivated you and
mm,
touched you to your core to be like, well, they can do it with this much resources. I can do it too with the
right.
resources that I have. You know what I'm saying? But also like you kind of talking about what was the word you said? Own the room or like take over the room? Like I never
Mm,
heard that before. It sounds like someone being extra and kind of like being, you know, I don't know, loud to some people. But taking over the room is like show them who you are. Is what I hear.
right.
It's like a takeover. Like you're not, you're more than what you represent, right? So when you're in a room, you want people to know who you are. You want also them to know like what you have to offer, like your gift, right? So take over the room is like reveal your gift, is what I
Correct.
heard you say, which is really
Right.
interesting. Question for you. Do you continue looking at different creative projects in a like a thoughtful way? Because when you talked about moving forward, if a creative project doesn't work, it made me think he's not afraid of failure. So how do you do that?
So I'll say the aha moments that was very freeing was listening to Bishop T.D. Jakes. He was talking about one of his sons, right? And how
Mm-hmm.
like he was in the pathway of, choosing this career path, and he was very like thinking a lot onto, is this the right path for me? Am I making the right decision? This, that, and the third. So asking for wisdom. His dad basically said that, like, pursue whatever you have in front of you at that moment. And if it's not the thing, then it might be the thing that will lead to the thing. So at that moment, it
Mm.
was like, when I heard that, I was like, huh, that's very freeing. So now basically, like I said, like, I pursue whatever I'm in the moment passionate about, or I have in mind my intention to do this, do that, or see how best I can create in this space and do it. And then, after a while, if it's no longer serving me, then, I just basically pivot or switch. But to your point, like, yeah, some might see it as failure, but an example I'll give is my YouTube channel. So since 2016 is when I basically started like maximizing the channel, but I've had it for a while prior to that, probably 2012. So, anyways, 2016 was the first time I took a trip back to Ghana since coming to the United States of America. So
Mm.
I did that, and then in my head, I'm like, you know what? Going back home, I know a lot has changed, and I know I can basically learn a lot from for myself, and also to come show people that basically ask about my culture, who we are, what we do, what is Ghana like, what are the differences between Ghana and America, this, that, and the third. I'm like, all right, let me just grab a camera, have the camera go where I go, and basically let people see Ghana through my eyes. So that's when I basically started using the YouTube channel to actually put content on there. And I did that for some time. I have some channels on there, some vlogs, some creative processes, and uh, all these things of that nature. But the long and short of it is that when the pandemic hit, at that point in
Mm.
time, I was thinking like, huh, what else can I do? Because we're not going out much, this, that, and the third. So we're stuck indoors. And in my head, I'm
Interesting.
like, well, I have been thinking of sharing my ideas and thoughts, and also hearing people's like point of view or stories. So how best can I do that where I'm not like out and about? Again, at that point in time, that's where I was thinking about this. So I'm like, yeah, why don't I create a podcast? And that's what during that period is where the idea came. And I think 2021 is where I picked it up to actually like start doing a podcast. And that's when I started the Plus One podcast. And basically, my focus now is the podcast versus the YouTube channel. But over time, the two would merge, where, like, on the podcast, we'll create video content, where the video content will go live on my YouTube channel as well as other platforms. But like I said, right now it's basically all audio on the podcast. And yeah, on in terms of creativity and creative work, it's easier because you don't have to worry about, like, the video aspects. You don't have to worry about, does the light look right for, what this person
Right.
is wearing, or for this room, or for these colors, the ambient walls, all these stuff. It's just mostly like focused on the audio, trying to get all the noise, reduced in the room, this, that, and the third. And I'm not worried about setting up a camera. I'm not worried about setting up light. It's just like turn on the mics, turn on the mixer, whatever we both have to talk about and share, go. So right now, that's currently where I'm at in terms of the creative process.
Okay.
But a lot of things inspire me anytime I'm watching movies, anytime I'm watching like a YouTube channel, especially like the big, big names on YouTube. And also, like, listening to other podcasts. Like, I pay attention to how they go about asking certain questions, how they follow up with questions based on the answers they receive. And
Mm.
every day is a day to be better than the day before. So I just take it all as a learning process. That will be how I go about my creative process. But majority of everything I do comes from God. So yeah.
Amen. Amen. Come through. No, I really like how you adapt. It sounds like
Mm,
you talked about adapting with the time. So instead of doing vlogs inside the house, which was not something you wanted to do, you were like, what else I could do? And
hmm.
you asked yourself what else you could do, right? Because you were
Right.
thinking about it, which is really cool. And I love the TD Jakes example because that shows me that nothing's a waste, right?
Mm,
The thing that
correct.
will lead to the thing will connect you to your purpose. Like nothing is a waste, no matter
Right.
what you think. And so, if you're listening to this and you're in this position or you're in an experience and you feel like it's not where you want to be, there's something that you're learning in that place that's going to help you when you get to the place that you want to be, right? And why not be happy now? Why not choose to find happiness in some places now instead of waiting until you have that job or you're with that person or you doing this thing, right? What I'm hearing you saying is like you're enjoying what you're doing and you're recognizing the value of what you're doing and the time, right? And you recognize that if it will shift because of something like a pandemic, it will shift, but you will continue to lean in at your core. And it sounds like your core is to enjoy life, is to be in this creative space. And it doesn't matter what medium you use, you will do that, whether it's a podcast or whether it is, a YouTube channel. Which is really dope. Does that sound correct?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
So the other question that I have for you is the version of you right now that you just described in some places or in some ways. Who do you, well, not who do you, what I would say is, what has brought you to this place of yourself? Like, what are the lessons learned that connected you to become this version of yourself? You sound like someone who is, and this is me speaking like on a podcast and also like knowing you, right? Like someone who knows who they are, who's centered in God, who believes in just having a good time, right? And like leaning into your creativity, being hardworking and focused and structured, but also like you're someone who you have this peace about you that I think others watching this will notice. And so like, where does that come from? Like, how did you become this person?
So I'll start by saying that life is not all rosy and whatever else you may think or you may understand from this interaction on the podcast. But I would also continue on to say that the peace definitely comes from God. Overall, who I am is basically life experiences and always coming back to my circle. And my circle includes like loved ones. Number one, like I said, God. Number two, family. Number three, friends. And that's what makes up my circle. I mean, strongly, I strongly believe that these core groups of people definitely help influence our lives. I mean, they are the ones that sometimes their idea of what you're going through in life and their suggestions and their advice goes a long way versus like, some general public or general person speaking somewhere that you might hear it. It's like, oh, that was good. But it might not impact you as much because how the proximity between this person and you is there for it to be impactful. It might be certain things they say that will be impactful, but I believe it goes a longer way when those that are closer to you share their thoughts and values. But then at the end of the day, you gotta review it with whatever your sort of like meter is. I mean, for me, it's God, so it's not everything someone says that I take it and run with it. But again, you have to take it through the lens of the Word of God, through the lens of your walk with God. How does that influence that? But those would be the major things. Another main thing, like I said, life experiences. So after school, I moved to Philadelphia, and I went to school in Orlando, Florida. So from Orlando, Florida to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, driving time that's like 14 hours, 15 hours, depending on road conditions. Let's put it that way. It could be about that.
Experience.
Right. Or it could be shorter, yeah. But anyways, long story short, like when I moved to Philly, that was my first time moving to an entirely new state, as well as moving to an entirely new like northeast versus way down south. Two different demographics and like the lifestyle, the culture, two different things. So when I moved there, I knew nobody there except a buddy of mine who was in Jersey. And he helped that move make it a little bit easier. During the first weekend I was in Philly, I moved with my dad and my brother. Shout out to them for helping me move. It made it a lot smoother as well. And my buddy spent the first weekend with me. So like now here I am, like not stressing about day one in the corporate world right out of school. It's like, nah, I got the homie here with me who's like, we just kicking it, chatting, encouraging one another. And he's like, bro, it's gonna be okay, this, that, and the third. And yeah, it made a major difference. But outside of all that, Philly helped mold me into who I am. I mean, a lot of it brought out of like what we spoke about earlier, like walking in a room and owning it. Like it brought out more confidence in your gifts and like walking in that boldly. So I would strongly say that Philly had a major impact with that for sure, without a doubt. And certain things like my sister actually brought this to my attention. She said that, wow, you've changed. And this is when I came back to visit family back down south. She's like, you've changed. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, you seem a lot more like you seem different in a good way, but not so much of a good way. And I was like, explain. She's like, well, now you're a bit like short and quick and somewhat mean. Now, don't take this the wrong way. But I was like, huh, interesting. But then again, it's like your day to day, the people you deal with, and the environment you are in. Whether we like it or not, our environment is impacting us. One or two things: you impact your environment, or your environment is impacting you.
Ooh,
So
say that again. Say that again. I'm sorry. You got to
one
say
or
that
two
again.
things. You're either impacting your environment or your environment is impacting you. So take the good, leave the bad, and then keep it rolling. So I agreed with her because yeah, like the culture there is different. Like people, so I love Philly more so than I do New York in terms of I can see myself living in Philly over New York because New York is a lot more fast paced versus Philly. But Philly still has the Northeast culture where like people are quick with it, and you gotta be quick. I don't know how best to explain it, but it's just gotta be like you gotta have some sort of attitude in terms of like trying to get things done. So over time, I realized that now she is right. Those things have changed because, yeah, it's just the environment impacting you, and you also impacting the environment.
Wow. I really love that.
Thank you.
I really love that because you help you help us realize that the people who are closest to us influence us the most, and that helps
Mm,
us become who we are. This person of peace that you are comes from God, but also your
mhm.
family, your friends, right? The people closest to you. The influences and the wisdom that you get from them helps you stay grounded. And I
Right.
love the story of like your friend being there with you before you started your corporate job, and your brother and your dad helping you move, right? It just shows you like people care, people are there for you, and you're not alone, right? In this world, especially this new city that you
Mm.
moved to, right? It can be scary. So,
Again, these were all people in the circle, like that I was talking about earlier.
right, and your circle matters. Your circle is what helps you. Birds of a feather flock together, right? Like you are. If you want to know who somebody is, look at the people they hang around, and like
That
your
part.
family. It sounds like it's very important to you, and that's part of who you are. But the
Mm.
other thing that you mentioned are places, right? Specifically Philly, and how the environment of Philly was like quick with it, but also like pacing, not as much as New York is like super fast, but how you were impacted by your environment because of the people in Philly, but you impacted your environment just by who you are. So the people that you were connected to in Philly, you don't even know how you impacted them, right?
Mm.
Positively, um, mostly, right? Let's say that. But like when you said that, I thought about everyone that you met in Philly and how you impacted them because I know you no longer are living there anymore, right? And so it's just really interesting this 360 view that you
Mm.
described. Um, and the last thing is like you coming back to visit and like your sister saying that things are different for you and your behavior. It makes me think about just everyone as we go through life. Like this year itself, like we got what 2 weeks left of this year. Today's the 14th.
Right.
And so, yeah, we have about 2 weeks left of this year.
Hmm.
And it's wild to think like in January, there was a version of you. And today, in December, there's another version. Maybe it's like progressing in a different way, right? Because of what you've experienced, who you are, who you're around, who you stopped talking to, who you're continuing to talk to, right?
Right.
Who you've met. And so I really love that. You kind of already gave us the people that you would thank in some ways. Um, but I just want to ask you a quick question that we can transition to close.
Mm.
Do you regret anything?
I mean, life always has its ups and downs. So yeah, there will be moments you definitely regret. I mean, but at the end of the day, like we spoke about during some portion of this, is that you take the lessons and you move on with that versus more so like the regrets. Because yeah, there would always be like pits and downfalls, but what can you take from it to be better? What lessons can you learn to avoid it down in the future? And also like, yeah, how did that affect you? What did you learn from it? And don't do that again, and how can we improve? So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I've definitely had some regrets in life. I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't, because it's not true.
Okay. But most of the time, we taking the learnings, right, and bringing it to like a place of like, okay, moving forward, lesson learned, you know, um,
Right.
which is cool. Okay. So, Julian, who do you want to thank? Who are the people? What are the things? Where are the places, perhaps, that you want to thank for bringing you to this version of yourself or bringing you back to who you are if you went off track?
Now, first and foremost, thank God. Like every most celebrities when they get up on an award stage, I like
Right.
to thank the big man upstairs. I like to thank God for. No, but on a real note, yeah, I definitely want to thank God for everything because I am who I am because of Him. Number two, major shout out to my parents. Like we do not understand the extent to how much sacrifice parents endure and parents have to make till you yourself get into a situation where you're mentoring somebody or you're basically parenting a human being, right? So the number one thing I'm most grateful for them is like, giving us life and protecting that life and guiding that life, nurturing that life, cultivating that life with the best they could with what they had. I mean, one thing I kind of jokingly say to my parents sometimes is like, I wish they taught us a lot more of like our dialect, not just language per se, but our actual dialect whilst we're young. Don't get me wrong, I understand it completely and I speak it, but not fluently in a way where I can just say whatever in the dialect. But certain things I have to think about it before I can make up what I'm trying to say in the dialect. So I jokingly say that with them, like, why didn't you, speak it with us as much as you did with a sister or whatever? But then again, the other thing too is like I said, they made the best out of life with what they had and what they could and what they knew at that point in time. Another thing I'm majorly grateful to them for is like the opportunity for them to bring us here to the United States of America. A lot of people say America is the land of opportunities, and it definitely is so if you maximize that and you understand what you have in front of you. So yeah, the fact that we have the chance to come here and to learn and to see what life and culture is like here and to learn and make the best of both worlds is another thing I'm majorly grateful for. Again, grateful to my siblings. They have been like in my they have been very impactful in my life, like encouraging me. I feel like one thing that has helped me a lot is that we should never let ego or pride or whatever take over. Because whether our siblings are younger or older, like they still have some wisdom they can impact in our lives if we are, remain humble and teachable and open to hear what they have to say. Because yeah, be it younger or older, like there's a lot of wisdom on both sides that we can learn from. And the other part of the group I'm most grateful for is like loved ones, family, friends, and yeah, friends have played a major role. Like I said, I spoke about one example of the Philly situation, but there are thousands of those examples. When I say thousands, not thousands of friends, but the small circle of friends
Okay.
multiplying. Right. I got a whole gang of people out here. No. Nothing like that. But yeah, long story short, like, yeah, my friends have definitely been impactful in my life too. So I'd like to thank my circle. Again, I'd like to thank my circle.
Yes. And it's so in line with what you said the first time. But thank you so much, Julian, for just being honest, flowing. You're definitely like in this peaceful Zen space, right? Coming fresh from back from the motherland and just giving us a drop of wisdom, right? We know, right, from the things that Julian shared, you're probably wondering, how can I stay connected with Conrad Julian? Where can I find him on YouTube, on Instagram, etc., his website? So, Julian, can you give us the information around how we can find you?
So yeah, on the socials, I'm not currently on Facebook. Mostly Instagram is where you can find me. So CEE_Jules is my personal Instagram page. And like I said, the podcast, we are at +1 podcast. So that's PLUS.1 podcast. Or is it the other way around? Let's do that again because I got to double check what I
All
keep
good.
forgetting what that
I
plus
keep
one
doing that.
podcast
It's
means.
+1 podcast. We have an incredible conversation, two podcast conversations where I think one was titled "Everything is Sales," which was
Mm-hmm.
came out of just conversation that we had, and a summary of what that looks like. But I'll pass it back to you to let us know what podcast.
So it on the podcast, it is +1 podcast. So PLUS.ONEPODCAST. +1 podcast. And we are on every streaming platform for podcasts. You can find us out there. On the Spotify's, on the Apple Podcasts, on the iHeartRadios, you name it, search for us, we on there.
You said something that I want to amplify before we close out. You
Hmm.
said it doesn't matter how old or young someone is. You're talking about your siblings,
Hmm.
but there's always wisdom that they can give you. You can also know that it's important to remain teachable, right? To remain humble. You can receive that wisdom. And there's a lot of people who have ageism in their families or ageism with their friends or coworkers, right? They look at, oh, if you're a certain age, I can't listen to you. But that really was really powerful because a lot of times people are missing out on information, knowledge, and
Oh, yeah.
understanding something in their life that they need to change, that can help them, that can heal them, right? But they're not open to it because of someone's age,
Right.
you know? So thank you for saying that.
I mean,
All
one thing
right.
we gotta understand is that everybody's path is different. So there are certain groups or certain circles or certain like environments they might have been in that you haven't been in, that they've learned certain things that you haven't learned or you would never learn in life because you would not go down that path, that they can share with you. And again, like I said, you have to take everything through your lens of whatever you view life and take the good from the bad and keep it pushing.
Wow. All right. Well, thank you again, Julian. It was a pleasure. Bye, y'all.
Likewise. Bye.